Hello and welcome to Amplify, the video series where we interview thought leaders about best practices, trends, and their experiences in creating engaging campaigns. Today, I am speaking with Dr. Chris Lee, the founder and CEO of Elemental Shift, a consulting company that helps transform businesses using brain-based strategies for motivation and productivity. Chris also has established a notable social media presence, and he hosts a successful health and wellness podcast. We're going to get into all of this today, so let's get started. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you. And I want to start out just asking you about your consulting company, Elemental Shift. What services are you bringing to your clients?
So, this is actually a business strategy consulting agency, which is essentially helping people restructure and better understand the modernization of basically the last 3 years. So, I think it would be a healthy approach to look at the last 3 years as just a burning down of the way that we saw business structure, right? Some people want to go remote, some people want to stay, in office and all of those different strategies. But what we know more than anything, what we've known since the 90s is that none of those things truly matter if you don't care about the people. Right. And with the way that we have technology and the more research that we are doing around taking care of our people, mental, physical, emotional, social health, that's where we get optimal performance for people to actually have the confidence to speak their truth. So huge part of what we do is we go in and then we start to go stress management with these companies, help the people at the top better support the people that are doing, boots on the groundwork. And then we create restructuring processes that really focus on decreasing turnover for companies, but also helping get the genius out of their employees.
Yeah, that's so exciting and certainly timely in today's world. What started you on that path where you're helping companies shift their mindsets around productivity and such? Like, how did you get inspired to do this?
Yeah, loaded question. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee because this is a bit of an experience. So, I actually started off inside of chiropractic school about 7 years ago now, which is crazy to say out loud 7 years ago. So, in chiropractic school, I had like the dream, right? I was going to graduate, 2.5 dogs, 1.7 kids, like just crushing the averages, the white picket fence that you power wash and you hate it, but everybody else has it. Like I was going to live the most mediocre, but beautiful life, the standard American, all of it. And there's a little voice I think that we all probably have as we're going down somebody else's path and claiming it as our own that tells us, are you really gonna be happy? Like, is this really gonna be your thing? And nowadays we call that white ceiling syndrome, trying to go to bed at night, looking up at the ceiling. And it's like, is this really is this going to be it? And my voice was not quite as friendly as that, had a couple other spicy words, we'll say. But along that path, I was blessed with trauma. So about a year into that, I'd finished up with one of the hardest classes, one of the hardest quarters that you have during school, which is basically the introduction to like complex physiology, medical physiology, neurophysiology, like all of these classes that are taking basic biology and then applying them to the individual, genetics, all of these different things. And it's typically like the weeder course. So I just finished up with my midterms and like a proper broke 22-year-old, I was going to go celebrate with the $5 I had. So I got on my 21 speed bike that I had gotten from Goodwill, shout out to Goodwill, and was going to go down to the Walmart and like genuinely treat myself, right? So scoot myself down to the old Walmart. Walmart has something called 3 Wishes. It's a $3 bottle of wine that the next morning, those 3 wishes are basically granted to like make the hangover go away. But you forget about 6 days later and repeat that pattern. The brain is fascinating in that way. So I got 3 wishes and I had like $2 left. And I went and got clearance aisle dark chocolate because like really feeling ritzy. And then I was going to go home and like watch my pirated Netflix, right? Because like that's what I had available to me at the time. But this is when the universe, God, something other than myself said, hey, like the whispers of like, is this going to create fulfillment in your life? Really, really wasn't happening for it. So get the whispers, then the screams, then the nudge on the back, then the kick in the booty. And then eventually phase 7 of that is you get hit by a black SUV barreling at 40 mile an hour on your bike. That was me. I hit that phase because I'm a slow learner apparently. And got thrown into the hospital, internal lacerations, bucket handle fracture, the whole thing. And the doctors are basically like, hey, hopefully we're going to get you up and walking in like, 2 months or something like that. And we'll get you up and running, maybe a little bit of hiking in like a year. And I was like, hold on here. Like I'm super young. Like I just came from like playing sports at college, like all of these different things. Like that's like a no fly zone for me. Like how could that possibly be something? So that was like phase one of this, is really taking a deeper look into, okay, is this something that I really can do anything about? And the 10 days that occurred after that was really me settling into feeling my own anxiety and depression. And I had no idea what that was at the age of 22. Right. So it was like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And there was this yo yo. But on day 12 of that, life radically transformed for its next phase. So on day 12, I had basically partially dropped out of school because I just couldn't go to class. If I can't go to my labs, you fail your labs, right? If you lose attendance, and like my teachers knew what had gone on. But I get a phone call in the morning, and it's from somebody that I hadn't spoken to in a long time, family friend. And they call me up and I'm like, is this Steve? And like, yeah, this is Steve. And dude is super frantic on the phone. Where he's like, hey, is this Chris? You still live here down in downtown Atlanta? Are you still here? I'm coming to your house right now. If your brother still lives with you, call him, get him home. And the dude hangs up on me. And I'm like, okay. So I call my brother and I'm like, hey, Steve, right? Steve, he's coming over and he's like frantic. Like, I don't know if he's like wired or strung out on drugs on a Thursday afternoon, like whatever he's doing, but like, I can't get out of bed. So like, if you could come, just be home, that would be nice. So I hear my brother's truck pull up, and then I hear Steve's car pull up to our like ratty apartment. And for whatever reason, I decided to stand up for the first time in 10 days. And if you've ever been like that level of sick where you can't really stand up, like the first couple like things, like trying to like watch a baby giraffe kind of get up, that was me. And I was like holding onto the wall for dear life, just trying to make it. And this is a moment that is like etched into my memory. It'll never go away. I finally get to the door frame and I'm holding myself up. And I hear my brother finally come up the stairs like 5 minutes later. And I hear him put the key in the door, and then the door opens and I see him and I see Steve, and they're sobbing, absolutely sobbing. And I've never seen my brother cry, my older brother, right, who's also getting his doctorate. And he sees me standing there, drops everything and runs over to me. And I'm like, what's going on? And he looks at me and he's just like holding me because I'm still bumped and bruised, right? And he said, Dad's gone. So my dad lived down the road from us. Our dad was our best friend, and he had committed suicide on that day out of nowhere. We had no idea the mental health challenges he was going through. And from that, my brother and I figured out, how to sell his estate, get rid of his cars, his clothes, all these different things, plan a funeral. My brother was 23. I was 22. Like, we're super young and have no idea what we're doing. So I go back to the hospital the day after I get that information. I say, take all of the equipment off. I'm not going to my dad's funeral like this. And they're like, you're silly, you're dumb, don't do that. And I said, whatever, I'll sign the papers, but like, I'm not going to my dad's funeral like this. And take all the equipment off. And, I start walking around and I can hear, crunching and like things that shouldn't be happening, but, just keep pushing it down and keep pushing it down and keep pushing it down. So 1 month goes by and everything's kind of, black and white and, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. All of the things that people say because people don't know what to say, right? Month 2 goes by and everything's just gray now. I don't really care about anything. I don't really care about school. I'm going through the motions. People are at, how are you doing? But I'm sick, hurts to walk. Everything's painful. I can't sleep. Don't really feel like eating. Like nothing really makes sense anymore. And then month 3 occurs. And on month 3, I get the next call. And on month 3, I get the call, which was the call that I needed, but didn't think that I wanted at the time, which was that I was going to be a dad. Surprise, surprise. And fast forward 6 months after that, oh, you're going to be a single dad all by yourself with this little baby girl of mine, trying to figure out how to do this. Still had a year and a half left of school, 0 income, just trying to, get food in the fridge or enough food for her. And all of these things kept crashing down and down and down. And I just felt hopeless. And eventually at a certain point, you hit that like rock bottom. But if you hit rock bottom hard enough, you can learn how to bounce, right? That was not me. I went splat. So I was chilling down at rock bottom, just trying to figure out what to do. And like most of us that have hit rock bottom, you're on YouTube or Google, like trying to figure these things out, right? I felt so much shame for not knowing how to parent. How do you change a diaper? How do you do all of these things? Like how to make money online, like all of these different things. But the thing that I knew more than anything is that I just needed to figure out how to not hate myself so much, how to like not like fall asleep and say that I am such a piece of shit for all of these things in my life. And I didn't know how to do that. So I went to personal development, went to the Bob Proctor, went to Tony Robbins, went to all of these different things, only to realize and discover that that doesn't really work well either. These systems, these models, the reality of those systems is that it's just frustrating, right? And they're really trying to help you, but they're not actually getting to the source of the issue. And at this point, I don't know if I was going to finish school. I was trying to take care of my daughter. And, I knew I could go work at a factory was what I was thinking, make $20 an hour essentially. And I knew that I wouldn't have to worry about food the way that I was worrying about food right now. For her, for me, I was skinny. I was a lot of things at that time. And this is where I really started to understand neuroscience. So during my doctorate, you can take different paths of specification. And one of the classes that really turned me on was that functional neurology. So in functional neurology, it really starts to describe the way that the body moves through space and the way that that changes the brain, the way that that changes the mind. So it was at that point that I started to better understand the way that the brain was operating for us to think, feel, and take action in our life. And the things that had failed me previously, it's not that they were the wrong tools or that those tools were necessarily bad. It was the right tool at the wrong time, right? And I started to feel a tremendous amount of shame for the lack of progress that I was making. One of those things that a lot of people experience is just kind of like the generalized caveat of like law of attraction, right? I was thinking, feeling, doing all the positive affirmations. And yet that beautiful little acorn was never blossoming into the oak tree that I knew it could. And that was when one of my neuroscience professors said, it's not as much about the acorn. Everybody has the potential to grow the oak, but it's the environment that you plant the seed in. That's what neuroscience is. And for whatever reason, right, that like dropped me in. And I said, great, I'm not going to go back into like generalized practice anymore. I'm going to go into neuroscience. And in fact, I was so passionate about it that I took an additional degree, took additional classes outside of school at Emory University to better understand neuroscience. And then I started to go to medical neuroscience at Duke. And then I started to do this and this. So by the time I graduated, I had not only completely started to heal my own stress, better understand my trauma so that when I did go to therapy, it was actually making more sense for me. But that path along the way gave me sustainable tools to allow myself to essentially deal with any other things that were going to come up in my life. And things are going to come up in your life. And over time, I started to realize, well, this is stress management, right? It's your brain's ability to tolerate uncertainties, change, which is going to happen to all of us, and then integrate those experiences so that you can learn from them instead of storing them down into your body for them to turn into, sickness or illness or just, stagnation or regret down the road. So people started to ask, how did you do this? Essentially. And I was like, I don't really know, right? I was just doing and I was learning all of this science just for me. So I didn't hate myself so that I could be actually present with my daughter. And then one thing turned into another and everybody was like, so like, you're a different person than you were 3 months ago, right? With everything that happened to you, like everybody fully expected me to drop out of school, go live in my mom's basement up in Michigan. And now I was healthy, I was happy, and I was able to actually integrate what I could control and let go of the things. So all of the mindset tools, they were actually coming into fruition in my own life without doing any of the mindset tools, right? And I think this is one of like the base understandings of neuroscience and neuropsychology is that at our core, we are happy, right? We are productive, we are expressive, we are beautiful, and we love ourselves even when we don't love ourselves, right? I love you even when I don't love you, like one of those things. Like, how do you actually embody that without just like writing out mantras all the time? And that's a self-regulated state. This is when the frontal cortex is online and all of these things really start to like ripple through. And it's not exactly the regular personal development. So I did my first seminar with students, right? It's $20 to get in just so that we could like pay for the library room. And 25 people showed up. I was like, this is weird, right? And that was one of the first times that I'd like ever spoken to people. And then at nighttime, what I would do is I would take a stack of books, either from the library or the books that you see behind me. 95% of those are from Goodwill. I had a deal with the lady at Goodwill. I will give you $5 every 2 weeks, and I want to take as many books as I can physically carry out. And I would read those books basically from midnight to 4 a.m. And I had somebody watching my daughter during that time. And I would come back. She had no idea what was going on, but I'd go to a Waffle House that was like right next door to like my apartment, if that tells you the quality of the place I was living in. And I would just crush it there for 4 hours and just learn and go over and over and over. And eventually at one of those Waffle Houses, a group of men in like three-piece suits at like midnight came in. And the long story short on that is they were a group of consultants working at like a Fortune 500 in Atlanta. And they came over and they're like, what the heck are you doing here? And I was like, what the heck are you doing here, bro? Like, I was 23, right? So, like, not really like high emotional intelligence. And essentially they were like, that's crazy. Cause I told them part of my story. And they're like, would you be interested in giving like a presentation or like a consultation to the group that we're doing? And like, we'll give you like $200. And eventually, one of the guys at the meeting that I'd given the presentation to, their watches and rings were worth more than like my entire life put together. Right. And the gentleman came up to me and said, the path that you want to take forward here is getting into consulting. You want to share what you're doing, refine it, get better at it because you're okay, but your message is extraordinary. And over time, over development, essentially it brought us into the world where we are now. Right. And then once the pandemic hit, we started making content for the general public around self-regulation. How do you deal with stress? Because we're all stressed, but like, how do we put that into compartments and take actual action on that? Physical, sleep, diet, exercise, mental, building certainty and mental models, emotional, trauma, creating predictive models, right? Cognitive contrasting, and then social. How do we deal with our relationships? And then having science-based tools for each of those categories. And that's what we do.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that, and so much to unpack there. So I'm curious about so many things, but when you started to tell that story and refine that story, at some point then you made this leap onto being really public about it and using social media. What was that like? Was that an uncomfortable moment? Was that difficult for you, or did that feel natural?
Yeah. So here's another vulnerable moment here. It was extremely vulnerable. And one of the first things that started to come up during that period of time, it was like, I think of March before like lockdowns went in. This was the first time that like I was ever invited onto a public stage, right? Like a big public stage with like, 3,000 people, I think. And at that place, like somebody had always like made the joke, like, when you really go to a professional place that has like a large audience like that in a main stage, like they won't have like the puke bucket that's there for speakers because the speakers are professional. Like the non-professional speakers, they're like going to want to throw up in the bucket before they go on stage. And that was the first thing I recognized. I was like, I've never gotten sick on my own. Like there's no bucket here. Like we're playing at a different level. So when I started to go on social media, I had the grand total of like 6 people following me, which was my mom, my grandma, my brother, and like that was it, right? And I said, I'm going to start making content on social media. And I was really, really bad at it. But I had made a promise to myself, 2 years, right? 2 years, we're just going to hammer down consistent no matter what, pretty much every single day, minus one day off per week. We're going to put something on social media. And every single day, I want to write for 10 minutes. And every single day, I want to practice my speaking for at least 2 minutes, right? And this is when TikTok started to come out. This is when Instagram Reels started to come out. So I had the opportunity to practice a lot of that. And some of those videos are still out there. They are atrocious. Like they are bad. Like I'm like looking at like, I don't even know, like the Ricky Bobby, like I don't know what to do with my hands type of thing. That was me. I was so confused, but I just stuck with it. Like I think people have this like common misunderstanding that like speakers are just naturally fluid and like it just makes sense to what to do with their hands and they're just all of these things. Maybe that is for some people, but I'm over here looking for the puke bucket, right? Constantly. And I'm still probably at that caliber sometimes. But bringing all of these things onto social media, I realized 2 things. One, it's very easy to put on a show, right? It's very easy to show, oh, life is amazing. Oh my gosh, like here's everything. And like, I've been talking on these stages and like here's the cars and like I stay at these hotels and all of these things. And it's all nonsense. Like you start to talk to some of these like other people that have like large audiences and things like that. And it's very much like, wow, like I could like peel the paint off of this. Like that is not quality, but like you spray painted it gold, so like it must be pretty. But like the people that I looked up to, the ones that I respected, didn't have like the perfect clear cut, filters on all their stuff. They just looked into the camera and they said, today was really rough. And here's why it was hard. But here's the choice that I made. And here's how I did it. And I was like, man, I love that. And the thing that we started to say at that time is like, life is going to be a dumpster fire, but friends can bring s'mores and we can show you how to use and cook s'mores with the dumpster fire of your life type of thing. And just being vulnerable, like authentically vulnerable to say like, this was really hard. Like today was a rough day. That was where I started to recognize people wanted that now. Like I think back in the early, 2000s, social media kind of created this caveat of like the influencer, right? Of people that had this clear cut, beautiful life. But nowadays, like people see through that, I think, more than anything. And people just want something that's real, something that's like, yeah, so I was really emotional this weekend and like everything's totally not okay. Right. So like I ate a pint of Cherry Garcia in a single sitting, but like that was after I ate half a pizza. But I feel a little bit better now. And like, did I journal? No, I didn't get the journal. I screamed into a pillow and then I called my grandma crying at midnight. But I'm okay now. I feel a little bit better. Right. And I still love myself for doing all of those things. Like that was the realness that I was like trying to bring to social media. And it was even more interesting being able to do that as a man. Because there was not a lot of gentlemen at that time, or at least not the people that I was seeing that were doing that in such a way. So yeah, really uncomfortable, really gross. I'm still uncomfortable. My kneecaps still sweat when I get online, but do it scared.
I love everything you're saying because I often talk about that too, like the authenticity and your people responding to the authenticity. It's not going to be for everybody. That's okay. Did you did you quickly come to that conclusion or did it bother you? Like did you get criticism at all?
I think the most criticism that I had gotten, and there's a quote that completely fixed this for me, was essentially like, "Who are you? What do you know?" Right? And like, I think that's what most young people on social media, not like young, but like new to that media platform, they run into that caveat of like imposter syndrome of people like, "Oh, well, that's just not right," or like, "Here's the meta analysis of like why you're wrong," and like all of these different things. And because I had like a professional credential out there, people like challenged that a ton. Right. They're like, well, this research, I'm like, that's a case study. Right. And like, well, this person's an expert. And I'm like, they might be. I'm not saying that this is like the tool. I'm saying this is my experience. And like what I tell most people that are new to this is like every person that comes in and like talks trash on your page is an opportunity for you to refine. Right. And the thing that I will tell most people is like those people that hate your content, tell them to make a video correcting it, right? Because most of them are just keyboard warrior. Like if you're not willing to put yourself on video, that's great, but like fix it, right? If you see a problem, fix it and be humble about that. So like all the time. And like the other really secret thing, this is not probably a great thing to tell people, your haters will blow your page up, respond to every single one of their comments because like the algorithm doesn't care, right? So like the more comments that you have on your stuff, so like everybody that's like, oh my god, your content's so great, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, like I'm super glad you're here. But people are like, you're a liar, like you're a snake, like you're a quack, I'm like, quack go, like duck goes quack, like what are you talking about, like, and like they just ring it out and it just pushes it out to more people. But every comment that you get of somebody that hates your content or that's calling you bad or all of those things means you reached another 5,000 people who are too afraid to say that that's what they needed at that time. And that was the big thing. But the thing that heals imposter syndrome, and I don't really love using quotes as mantras, is that there's no such thing as a unique message. There's only unique messengers. And I have that quote card. It's been on the back of my phone for always. It's on my camera. So like every time I do that, like, oh, I feel like somebody else could do that better. Like Joe Dispenza is doing this better. Like, why would I ever? It's like, that's not it. Right? It's how you say it. It's the weirdness of who you are that really brings to light and gives other people permission to be weird too. So he can be weird or squirrely or professional, however they choose to be, but I'm going to be weird and squirrely in a way that only Chris can. Right. And that's what makes everybody like their own unique genius.
So you started to build your audience and now your numbers are quite large. What kind of audience are you reaching these days?
So we have a total audience of followers that is 500,000. on social media alone. And then we talk to about 20,000 people per episode on our podcast. Our weekly audience is right around 2.5 million that we get to connect with every week.
Wow, that's amazing. What would you say, like, so you talked a little bit about responding to everybody on your, YouTube. Are there other tips that you have for someone looking to build an audience, or how did you do it? What did you find was successful?
So there is a gentleman out there called Simon Sinek, and he always talks about start with why. And I would respectfully say that why will get you out of the gate, but the how is the thing that lets you do it without burnout, right? So if you really look to creators that can do this sustainably, they're always asking what, right? What and how, not why, right? And they build models and systems that allow them to constantly like perform. And this is the question that I get more than anything, like, how do you make that level of content? Like, how do you make so many like posts or comments or videos or articles or whatever the heck it is? And it's because I have systems, right? Because if I don't have systems, I will brunt myself to a crisp because there's no start and there's no end. And if there's one thing that the brain loves more than anything, it is a start and a finish, right? It wants to know clear lines. It wants time-bound boundaries. Like all of those things come into play. So for people that are going to get started, I would make sure that you create like objective goals, right? And this is going to sound so back ass words for like the people that are like, oh, it's emotional intelligence guy. No, there's time and a space for that. But at the get go, if you're just going to get started, make your goal to make content out of like 3 months, take 5 days off in that 3 months. And I'm not saying that it has to be perfect. If you put one line on the page, awesome. If you just share a quote that day and how it made you feel, or if you just share, hey guys, I don't really know what I want to talk about today because like I'm just feeling like blah, like I just feel sad. Like the resistance and the hardest part to making content is either like typing the first letters on the keyboard, or it's like sitting down and recording, or it's just starting. Like the hardest part is constantly starting. So like set yourself up with those goals and then set yourself up with time bound goals on how to execute those things. And this is what I did for myself. Like the 2 year stretch that I had, I made content every single day. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, my birthday. I was up at 4:15 every single morning, just writing or just making videos or just recording, right? And stuff that people will probably never see. But I did it because this is the thing that I was like, I really like this. And like the big thing for me is like, if my dad would have seen this content, I think it would have saved his life. I think he would have got to meet his granddaughter. I think all of these things. And like my goal at the start of this was just to save one life, right? And eventually, somebody had reached out and said, I was close, right? Like tomorrow was like the day for me. I was going to go do all the things. And they sent me this very long message. And at this point, the goal is to like hit the million mark, right? Where we've impacted the lives of like a million individuals that we've been able to connect and establish a relationship and like give them tools that give them hope. Not give them hope, give them tools to find their own hope. That what progress actually feels like, something that's tangible. So if like you have anxiety, it's not like, all right, like you just got to make it through this. You just got to grind. No. I need you to breathe in like a 2-to-1 ratio for 5 minutes a day. It will correct that imbalance in your brain, right? Like those types of steps where it's just like, oh, that's all I have to do. The same way you go pump gas when your car's out of it, do these things, under-regulate, over-regulate, so people can better understand those components. So for people that are getting started, like find the people that you aspire to, create those goals, and then like just do it. Like the biggest thing, like if you can't do it happy, do it scared. Like that is the thing.
When you talk, there's just so much alignment. You're so authentic with what you're doing, your messaging. It just feels like you're 100% there. And I'm sure that that's one of the reasons, besides all the hard work you're putting in, that people are really responding. Is there a platform for you that has been the most important in building that audience?
Yeah, for sure. The platform would be the one between myself and my therapist and myself in the journal. I know it's like a a caveat, like go to like the no, like sit down, journal these things out. Like you can only be as honest and vulnerable with other people as you are with like looking yourself in the mirror. And you can't read the label inside of the jar. So get somebody that you feel safe with to help you unpack those emotions, right? Like I love my therapist. And like, to be fair, like the therapist I have right now is a beach ball, but she cuts it to me straight, right? She's like, this is what you're doing. This is the pattern. You told me this is what your pattern was. Why are you doing the pattern, right? Like the therapy that works well for me is probably not the therapist that works well for everybody. This lady is not kind and gentle. She's like 85 years old. And she said, stop thinking about feeling and just sit down and cry. She's like, get the cherry Garcia, get the ice cream, get the pizza if you need to sit down. And I know food is not a healthy option for everybody, but for me, it works great. Sit down in the bathtub, greasy fingers, a bubble bath, eating pizza and crying. And then she's like, did you cry in the bathtub last night? I'm like, yeah, I cried in the bathtub. She's like, do you feel better? Yeah, I feel better. Like, you don't want to admit when like somebody's right, but that's like the best thing, right? Like, don't use social media as therapy. Like, somebody sent me this post the other day that was like, men would rather become a life coach than go to therapy. Like, so don't be that guy. Don't try to use like coaching as like your modality for like being a better person. Like, learn how to be alone. Like, learn how to like enjoy the discomfort of the silence of your own life. Like, that's like the biggest thing. Like, I've been on my own with just me and my daughter for like 5 years now. And like learning how to be alone and be okay with aloneness has been like the hardest. Like, I have 8 football fields worth of pizza, but like, man, I know what my self-worth is at this point. And I hope that that can be expressed in a way that doesn't come off as like conceited or cocky, but like, you have to know what that distinguishing line is. And most people never give themselves permission to like claim what it might be to be cocky. Or it's like, is it really cocky? Or like, am I worried about that? Like, that distinguishing feature is hard for people. And some people just never consider those things either. So stepping into your own alignment, finding the tools, and then just using those tools every day to sharpen the axe, like, that is the secret sauce.
And what about your audience growth? Like, what social media platform is most important for you as you build that and work to reach more people?
So what I will tell most people is that you want the most sustainable audience. So like things that go up quick in flames also burn out very quickly. So when you go into like business models, the ones that work the best are the ones that have like longevity, that aren't the ones that are like making the cars. They're the ones that are thinking about making the cars, because cars are always going to have innovation, but like that model of car will always go out of style, right? So be the person that's creating innovation and then like selling innovation, so that the person that can actually do is the person that can do. Because those people, some people are good at that, but like if you're a creative thinker, be the innovator, right? Be the thinker about those things. And that's progressively where we're going, right? Like things are going to become autonomous and we're using robots for more and more. So like be the person with the ideas, I would say. So in terms of that, I think this most sustainable platform is going to be SEO on Google, right? Search engine optimization. You want to be at the top of that list. And I'm saying these things as this is something that I try to practice more and more. So if like you look up science-based tools and like try to find my name, like I'm like 10th on that list, right? But like Google's not going to go away. However, we also thought that Facebook wasn't going to go away, or all these other platforms, but like TikTok is giving them a run for their money, right? And I'm not saying like don't use them out of fear that they're going to go away. Use them as a tool to share the message, but like where you share is the vehicle. The fuel is the message, but you are the driver. So don't be a driver that's attached to the car, right? Be a driver that knows how to drive multiple things. So I think YouTube, because it's owned by Google, is highly sustainable. And I use Instagram, I use, podcasting, I use all of these different things. The thing that I invite people to consider, and this has happened to a few people, and these are unfortunate things where you just get gone on those media platforms. Can you come back with the same confidence, the same integrity to go from 230 followers that I have on Instagram today, go to 0 and not care? Still be able to make money with 5 followers, right? Still be able to like find value in those things, right? That's where I want people to have that sense of integrity to do, where you can still make money. And I tell people this all the time. I was making $10,000 off social media with 1,500 followers, right? And like, how are you doing that? There's value in my work. There's the perceived value of things, right? That you have to like better understand. And this is something that I talk about with corporations too, is that there's two free cars, and I let you pick, right? Car number 1 is a Ford Fiesta, right? It's a 2020 Ford Fiesta. It's free, right? There's no price tag behind that. The other one, also free, is a Lamborghini, right? They're both free. Like, which one do you want, right? Like, everyone takes the Lamborghini. But like, wait, why would you take the Lamborghini? Or they're both free. Like, why? What made you have that choice? They're like, well, it's more valuable. It's not. It's not more valuable. It's free, right? Both of these cars are free. It's the perception of value and status behind those things that you want to consider more of. So all information online is free. Are you a Ford Fiesta or are you a Lamborghini? Like, why are people choosing those things? And people choose the Lamborghini because the value that it can provide, the excitement, the thrill, all the things that create the perception of value outside of financial means, right? Or are you somebody that's kind of like more basic, following the cookie cutters? This is the challenge. And this is, I'll let it sleep after this. Don't be someone that follows trends, because you will always be a trend follower. Like, people ask me, how'd you get all your followers? And I'm like, I'm not over here like pop locking and dropping over here for free, but like, be the person that's constantly using your voice and the way that you are living through life as the vehicle, right? Don't be like following these videos. Don't be doing this. Just be authentic. Like, you don't need to hide behind something. Just be you. You're enough as you are. Your message is strong enough as you are. You're standing. You made it to where you are today. Have confidence in that. Most people will never claim that as their own. Like, you went through trash, like you went through hard times and you made it. Someone else is in that hard time right now and they need your story more than anything else. They don't need you doing trends or following those things. Just be you, right? Because if you're just you sharing your voice and it gets 1,000 views, those 1,000 people watched you through to their entirety, versus you get 1,000,000 views, right? But it's you like doing a dance trend with like a quote.
Right.
Who really made the impact, right? Somebody else changed 1,000 lives. The other person, 1,000,000 people saw them, but they're just another person along the line. You're just like the others. We don't need more of that. I need more of you. I need more of that unique messenger that doesn't care about the message, right? Like, which sounds squirrely and weird, but that has been the thing that has, like, kept people following me around. Like, my account went down on Instagram for like 3 days, and like, people were like searching and scouring, like, where the frog did this dude go, right? And it was just like a flaw for like some of the ads that I was running. But when I came back, they're like, where'd you go, right? Like, I didn't miss you, like your videos and your pop locking and dropping. Like, we just missed the value that you bring, right?
Mm.
And that was it. And it's free value on social media all the time. So that's what I would tell people, is like, follow the sustainable path, but like, still, like, at the end of it, you got to do it scared, do it consistent, right? And it's not the consistency that like, I'm doing it consistent for the algorithm. Do it consistent to build the skill, right? Like, don't put your value on an algorithm, put it on like sharpening the axe, right? Like, there's the old story of like the two lumberjacks. They both go out for 12 hours. The first lumberjack cuts wood for 12 hours straight and is always wondering where the other guy is. And the other guy comes out 6 hours later and he's like, where the heck are you? Right. And he's like, oh, well, I spend the first 6 hours like sharpening my axe, right? Like, be the second guy, work smarter, not harder.
So, Chris, I want to ask you about video. We have a video marketing company, so I'm always curious about video, and I think the approach I'd like to take with you today is, you've talked a lot about authenticity, bringing yourself, overcoming imposter syndrome through just the belief that you do have a valuable message to bring because you're the one bringing it. And I think where I want to go with this is, these days there's so much talk about AI and AI this and AI that and computers this and computers that. And yet there's something about the medium of video and the humanity of someone like yourself, bringing that message. Can we just dive into this a little bit, about
Yeah.
why this particular medium is so powerful?
Yeah. So the unconscious mind, let's say, embodies a huge part of like your senses, and the occipital lobe occupies 40% of the brain mass, which is like, that's a lot. And it's because we use our eyes so much to detect threat. What's that rustle in the bushes? What's this? What's that? What are all of these different things? But one of the things that has allowed us as humans to come to the status that we are is that we have community, right? And I know who my community is way before language was developed, simply because we had the capacity to like read body language, right? So like shoulders back and like little like arms down to the side, but like tensed up, like, you're a little bit tense there, right? Like you read this body language way faster in the vibrato of my words and the speed and the dictation, all of these different things. Or you can have somebody slow down, really start to develop a message, like settle into the intimacies of a moment so that we can be here, so we can be together, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's scary, right? We get to share this moment. Like the complexities that you can use video in to evoke emotion in your audience is exceptionally powerful. And it's something that really skilled writers can do, right? And you can develop that writing skill. I love to write, even though like it's sometimes good, sometimes bad. I love that, but video is raw, right? Like one of the videos that I had done like way early on, like I didn't know it, but I had like toothpaste stain from my little girl, like all the way across my shirt. And I was talking about like perfectionism, and like I had no idea that that was there. But, like somebody was like, "Hey, like I thought that was your t-shirt, but like what is that across you?" And I was like, "Oh, it's toothpaste." Yeah, like get that off there. But like you can't hide some of those things, right? And like even like the people that I like really enjoy like consuming content from, they don't like hyper edit their videos, right? It's very straightforward, it's very honest, it's very real. And that's the power of video, is that you can settle into a moment with somebody, right? Instead of like having them go 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 go. And especially in a modern world, you want that level of relatability, right? You want that level of like depth, that a level of like, man, yeah, I've been there too, where like Christmas morning, like my little girl woke up and like we can settle into like watching her like have the magic of Santa, like watching her like settle into like, oh, like the carrots are gone from like outside. Like I don't get to have that. And I was really afraid that I had like lost that forever. Like, you become older and like it's gifts and presents, but like she has magic in her life, right? And I get to watch that wonder like scape across her life in every moment, right? The way she uses her imagination, like you can gift that to other people through the power of like stories, right? In a way that like only video can capture. And the ability for us to share stories in such a vulnerable way using body language like across the globe is extraordinary. Like for you to not share your message, and this is going to sound like a little heavy, I would almost say that it's selfish, right? You have a message that somebody desperately needs, even if it's how to make candles, right? Even if it's this is how you cut straight lines in the grass, whatever it is, somebody is looking for it, right? There are like 7 billion searches every single day. Like one of them is how to pick your nose with your pinky, right? Like whatever it is, like there is like a butt for every seat, says the car salesman. Like there is a search for every need out there too. Like invite yourself into the space and then get clear on what that is by allowing your audience to help show you what you're good at. Like more than anything, settle into that and then get uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. There are 2 triggers for neuroplasticity, right? Which is the brain's ability to change and adapt due to circumstance. One of them is focus, right? On a singular topic, a singular subject, which is why social media is such a trash fire for our brains, because it's different topics every 6 seconds, right? Bad for your brain. But the second thing that most people forget is that agitation is that second trigger for neuroplasticity. It should feel uncomfortable because you're challenging the status quo, right? You want to feel that level of discomfort. And every time you feel that level of discomfort, I want you to hear like Chris in the back of your brain going like, oh, we're changing. Like the brain's changing. Like I'm getting better. I'm adapting. So whenever you feel frustrated, whenever you feel upset, like all of those things, like that's plasticity in motion. So like the fear that you have, the anxiety, that is your brain trying to maintain status quo against the direction of life and the potential of your expression. So if you can bear witness to that voice and then recognize, and this is a big thing for people that have rumination, the voice of rumination and the voice that is constantly running the overthinking, the next time that that happens, listen to it and see if it's your voice. Like, spoiler alert, it's not. It's some weird, squirrely, like nostrily, like little like dude or lady fishing around back there and all of your memories and insecurities, just trying to keep the ship afloat, right? when you really settle down, just say, hey, I name my person Steve, right? Like, hey, Steve, we're a little upset today, I see, right? Like, I get it. Like, let's give you a hug, take one of my daughter's like big fluffy unicorns and squeeze it. And like, Steve, you feel better. Like, I don't feel any better. Like, I don't even care, Steve. I love you. Like, have a great day. And now I can hear my own voice again. And my own voice is not like, oh, like you're a little bitch. Like, don't shoot the video. Like, everybody has this message. It's like, no, dude, you got this. Like, you can step into that. That's the person that I want more of, right? It's the person that's expressive, but also claims Steve as a part of their own, right? So like that little voice that's in the back of me is like, oh, you shouldn't do this, or like, you got bogeys hanging out of your nose, or whatever the heck it is for like this interview. It's like, I'm here to be real. I'm not here to be perfect, right? I'll leave like being perfect for some other like Instagram model. But it's not me. Trash fire over here, but it's like my trash fire, and it's warm and keeps me warm, and I appreciate it. And Steve and I gather around that fire and we hang out sometimes. But like that authenticity, that movement, that inspiration, it's internal, right? And that comes from like doing the work, however that shows up for you.
So, question for you: as you were getting started and building your audience and doing all the things that you're doing, um, touching lives out there, is there some advice you wish you would have been given?
Is there some advice that I wish? So if I could have gone back, like the best time to plant a tree was like 3 years ago, right? Like, and this is the thing, is like you can have regret for what you didn't do, or you can do it scared today, right? Like when most people reach out to me that I either graduated school with, or like high school or whatever it was, they're like, how did you do that? Is like they everybody wants like the shortcut, and there's shortcuts out there. You can buy followers, you can do this, there's still a lot of shortcuts out there. But when it comes down to it, when you have to ferry people through the mountain passage, I don't want the person that took the shortcuts. I want the person that can deal with the strife and challenge and tribulations. So fail, learn from the failures, but you're not your failures. So if I had to go back and give myself advice, I would have given myself the same advice that's been on my wall: do it scared, right? And then allow yourself the humble pie. Get the whole spoon. Don't take a slice of the humble pie, because who eats that after Thanksgiving? You don't eat it slices. You take a fork to it like a proper adult, and like be the person that takes the fork to the pie, eat the humble pie, and then allow the audience that's like curating around you, even if it's 1,000 people, to help ask, hey, what do you guys want to see today? How can I support you this week? Don't be the person that has all of the answers. Be the person that helps other people find those answers, and use yourself as an example more than anything. Like those small little steps, I think, has been a huge reason why, through all of the challenges and like the inconsistencies of social media, like my audience has stayed there. Like they haven't gone away. Like even when I take days off now, whenever I take a week off, whenever I'm doing this, whenever I'm doing that, whenever I have spelling mistakes, because like my spelling is atrocious, they're not like, oh, like you're a piece of, like, they're always like, hey, like progress, right? Like not perfect. Like, hey, you had like a bogey stuck to the side of your nose. Like, yeah, well, that happens sometimes. Or like there's like ice cream stuck to your shirt, like whatever it may be. Like I'm letting my audience see me, and I've allowed them to help me also figure out like what I'm good and what I'm bad at. Like if you can be okay with being bad at something, but knowing that your message is important so you can get better at it, you are unstoppable at that point, right? Build the skill of speaking more than anything, or the skill of writing. Like wherever you want to go in life, build the skill around that. So I knew that I wanted to be like a better speaker. So like, how do you get better at speaking? You don't study speaking, you speak, right? You talk about it, you be about it, those types of things. You study like the great people who have ever spoken, and then you do what they did until it settles into like your characteristics as a person, it settles into your soul. And then you become a more authentic version of yourself. Like build the ego, and then take the ego away and see what's left behind, right? Like the ego is like the big marble stone. And what gets left behind after you chisel that away is like the David in the stone type of thing. Like be the David in the stone, knowing that you're not completely exposed yet.
Hmm. Great, great advice. Great advice, all of it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And as we conclude this interview, is there anything that you wish you would have been asked that we didn't get to talk about? We talked about building your audience, we talked about your message, authenticity, vulnerability. Is there anything that, final thoughts you'd like to share, or anything you didn't
Yeah,
get
the
asked by your
biggest thing for
interviewer?
my yeah, no, these have been amazing questions. The biggest thing for the creators out there are imposter syndrome and burnout, because the way that you
Mm.
create and the way that you do that, it's on this little black box, right? So like having boundaries on your phone for like sharing and expression would be the biggest thing that'll make sure like how you express is consistent more than anything else. So like I use an app on my iPhone called Opal, which kills all my apps. Doesn't even let me on them, right? The only things that are available are text message, phone, and like Kindle. Like that's it, right? So I am creating a refresh period of time for me every single day to make, do my due diligence, and to share, and then stop. But like create systems for your expression so that you can pour into your work and then you can pour back into yourself, right? Those boundaries, those models plug up the holes so that you're not burnt out. Like some of the best creators just get so barbecued with it that they stop and then they go back to like their typical jobs and then they're miserable, right? Like if the lifestyle that you want is to be somebody that shares these ideas, you have to build models so that you can do it until the day you drop, right? And that's more than anything what stops people from doing this consistently. And then the last thing that I will say, since we are recording on MLK Day, is that I have to share my favorite MLK quote, which is power without love is reckless and abusive. Love without power is sentimental and anemic. And I've had this quote card like in my car and in my wallet. I carry it around with me everywhere to really exemplify. And I've had this, like, it's not just because today's MLK Day. It's like that quote, like, leaves me every single time with like a new meaning on how to like not only carry love into my day, but to not make it sentimental and anemic, but to have power stand for something, to have it stand for truth, to have it stand for justice, to have it stand in the wake so that when fear butts up against it, it doesn't fall over afraid. It stands in its truth and it embraces it the way that the light can embrace the dark. That's what I want my love to do. And I hope that that's what other people can do with their love as well.
Dr. Chrisley, this was a wonderful interview. Thank you so much for your time. That was a beautiful way to round it out. To all our viewers, thank you for being with us today, and see you again next time on Amplify. Dr. Chrisley, have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for your time. This was great.
This was amazing. Thanks for having me.